I have played a lot of computer games over the years. I don't think I'll be shocking anyone if I admit to that. I would love for, I think the world is rich enough to set a game in. That would be easy. Trying to do the books as a game would be trickier. I mean, does everybody play Kvothe? That would be kind of weird. Plus, he's mine. Nobody else can be Kvothe. But I could see a game maybe set in the university where Kvothe and some of the others are other characters, and maybe there's a different storyline kind of running through. Yeah, absolutely, I could see a bunch of different games coming out of this. I was actually invited to help write a computer game, which is fascinating to me, because the sorts of stories you can tell in a video game are different. In a book, you have one storyline and everyone participates in the same story. In more experimental sorts of books, you can have a bit of a branched narrative, like a choose your own adventure, where, you know, do you try to kill the dragon? You know, page 63, and you go, you die. Oh, and then you flip back and you do something else. But in a video game, you have the freedom to control the story, as you're not just a reader, you're an active collaborator in the story. And that fascinates me as a writer. I think I would have a blast working with some video game developers to do something like that. I would love to kind of explore those different storytelling options. What other authors I like is easy, and you don't have enough tape in the camera to let me get to the end of that list. Peter S. Beagle is brilliant, you know, and if I had to pick right now at this moment in time, The Last Unicorn has to be probably the best story I've ever read. It's perfect. I remember reading it and absolutely despairing that I just knew that I would never be able to write a story like this, that's so short and perfect and self-contained and true. There is truth, like big capital T truth in that story. But it's fun and it's sweet. It's just like a pearl. And I thought, I can't ever do that. Okay, put it down. I'll do my own thing. And then I caught him speaking at a conference that one time, and he said, I never want to write a story like that again. It was too hard, because I realized partway through that I was writing a fairy tale that was also a satire of a fairy tale. And it was like somebody had hit me with lightning, where I realized that's exactly what I had done with my book. It was an epic fantasy. It was also a satire of epic fantasy. And I went, I did write a book like The Last Unicorn, although no one would ever see the comparison except for me. So Beagle is great. Neil Gaiman is masterful. In my opinion, you've got about 3 things that can happen in a book. There are 3 things that you will love a book for. Language, the story, and the trappings, you know, the plot and the character and the stuff like that. Maybe it'd be fair to say language, story, plot, and characters. Those are the 4. And if you can do 1 or 2 of those right, you can write a good book, as long as you know what you do well and you focus on those. And it's so rare that you get somebody that does all of those. Beagle is good with story, character, play. He's got all of them. Gaiman has all of them, although his language is beautiful in a different way than Beagle's. Tim Powers writes an excellently crafted story. In a different way, I really liked Jim Butcher's Dresden Files books. They're pretty new, they're urban fantasy, but I'm pretty convinced that either he might be my evil twin from another dimension, or I've got the beard, maybe I'm the evil twin, but he's writing first-person narrative magician with an attitude. I can tell he's an intellectual magpie too. Where in one of the books, like he used the word for the thing that sits by the fireplace. It was like the hod, and I go, "That's called a hod?" I had no idea, and I'm like, I have to meet this guy. I know that he like collects this information the same way I do, and it comes into the story and it kind of enriches it. He's got a great character. He writes great action. I really love those books. I'll stop myself there. In the second book, it's fairly obvious that things always hopefully should build in a story. Luckily, I purposefully kept things reasonable in this first story. It would not be appropriate in a realistic, gritty world like I've built for young Kvothe to save the world from the unstoppable evil. I mean, from the position that he's in, you know, staying in the university, making a few friends, and keeping himself fed is more than enough challenge for him. Those are realistic and almost insurmountable challenges for him in his position in this realistic world. Of course, 3 books of Kvothe like scraping by and keeping himself fed would be kind of boring. As he grows up and as he slowly, I don't want to say builds his power, but he does become more mature, more stable. He makes friends. He gets a certain amount of financial security, you know, by hook or by crook. And then the trouble he can get himself into is exponentially greater because he gets, of course, a little cocky, a little reckless. He ends up feeling comfortable enough to venture out into the wide world to make his fortune, and there's a lot of trouble you can get into out there, and he gets into all of it. It's safe to say there's going to be more sex, which is to say some sex, because there wasn't much in the first book. There's going to be more violence. He grows up and becomes tangled up in some very dangerous things that, you know, violence is just going to be the watchword there. The sex thing is very interesting because Tolkien set the template for epic fantasy, and there's no sex in Tolkien. There's no women in Tolkien. There's no kissing in Tolkien, you know? And that's sort of like everyone follows in those footsteps, or the footsteps of the people who followed in those footsteps. And so some people read my book and they go, I really love how Kvothe thinks about sex. And I go, he doesn't hardly think about it at all. And of course, some people have said, it's way too sensual for my taste. And I feel so sorry for those people. Like, Kvothe sees a naked young woman behind a sheet and goes, wow. And they're like, that's too sensual. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry for you if that is too much. Steer away from the second book in that case. Or, you know, better yet, read the second book. Learn to love it.